Good morning. Well, this has been a long-awaited date for us, actually a year later than we had hoped. I want to give you just a brief story about what this is all about, then introduce our fabulous guest speaker for today. At the conclusion, I'm going to ask her some questions, but she would also entertain any questions that you might have. So as she is speaking this morning, I hope you'll be thinking about questions that you could ask her that may be beneficial to you as you work your way through your career choices. Joe Phelps Fabian was a fantastic friend of the School of Music. Joe was a very complex lady, had many interests. Joe was the one who endowed the Fabian concert series, the string-centric concert series. But a few years ago, she made a gift to the music school, a substantial seven-figure gift, to create what we would call the Fabian Center for Musical Excellence. The Fabian Center for Musical Excellence has three various arms. One is to expand the concert series, and as you know, tomorrow evening is Canadian Brass that will be in here. There are other things, events that you've seen that are scheduled through the year, other programs that are part of the Center for Musical Excellence. In addition, she wanted to have symposia in music, philosophy, and the arts. Joe was a well-traveled person, and she thought that people ought to have exposure to so many things, so part of her gift is for that. The third part of the gift was for incoming freshman students who were just absolutely fantastic musicians, fantastic communicators, and so what was established was the Fabian Distinguished Music Scholars. And Joe was a great friend to all of us, and we're all indebted for what she has done and what she's going to provide as an expansion of your educational opportunities. Today, we are happy to have with us Dr. Jane Chu to be our first symposium speaker. Jane and I actually go back a couple years. Jane was in Fort Worth and actually sang in one of the choruses that I directed. And then we spent many years in different areas. Jane's parents immigrated from China. She was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma. Her father was on staff at Oklahoma Baptist University. Then she moved with her parents to Arkadelphia, Arkansas, where she received her bachelor's degree in music education and piano performance, then went to Southern Methodist University, received a master's degree from SMU, then from there to Rockhurst University, where she received an MBA degree, and then a PhD in philanthropic studies from Indiana University. Dr. Chu also holds 4 honorary doctorate degrees. She was chairperson of the National Endowment for the Arts, and during her 4 years there, she traveled to all 50 states, 200 communities, and made more than 400 site visits to visit visual artists, musicians, dancers, actors, writers, arts educators, and arts administrators. The NEA in 2016, while she was there, was one of the best places to work in the federal government in the small agency category. Jane brings a wealth of information. And I hope that you will find her to be incredibly inspiring, directional for you, and answer many questions as you navigate through what she navigated through. Some of you have said to me, I'm not sure what direction I'm going, and I think that's normal. And I think Jane may address some of that today. So Dr. Chu, we welcome you to Mercer.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be here, and thank you so much for coming out. I sort of laughed I saw the attendance since required part of the, we all want to thank Dr. Keith for not scheduling this at 6 in the morning, right? Yeah. So, but it's really great to be here, and I've been looking forward to this very much. I especially want to congratulate you on your accomplishments at the Townsend School of Music, because you have a wide range of activities going on, and your faculty is so capable, and you've really created this environment where you can give students a way to sense how they can participate, and it's not only here at the Townsend School of Music, but also after you graduate. And also a huge accomplishment to how you learned during a pandemic. Not every arts program or arts organization in America survived the pandemic, but you have survived, and this is a really big deal. So as Dr. Keith mentioned, I majored in music in college, piano performance, and I also pursued a degree in music education, K through 12, and I minored in flute and voice, and I loved my university experience. It is possible that when some of you first enrolled in college and you told your family that you wanted to pursue a profession in the arts, you may have been met with some resistance, or maybe they encouraged you to minor in something more practical. My mother actually tried to do that with me. But I hope that today you're going to remember that you as arts leaders are right on time. We're in the arts because they offer us something much deeper than just having a job. They incorporate meaning in our lives. And for me personally, there was not a choice. I had to be in the arts because I wanted to find meaning in the way I expressed myself. And now I realize that I could not have made a better decision. And now I see that my decisions were right on time, including being a leader. There could not be a better time for those who are in the arts. And by that I mean music, dance, visual arts, creative writing, theater, education, administration, and on, because you're creating a type of culture, a type of environment where people can thrive, because that opens the door to creativity. It is not easy to create an environment where people can thrive, because there's not this step-by-step process where one step automatically leads to the next step. And in fact, when leaders create a culture, they know it's a really messy process, and that process never seems to stop. So once we create an environment where people can thrive, it's such a dynamic process, and in a lot of ways, it's never complete. And there's no exact template for everybody to follow. It's not like being in a clinical laboratory where everybody anywhere can replicate each step exactly alike in order to create a culture, but that's what you're doing as an artist and what you will be doing. So this is a great time to feel so good about the power that you have as an artist and as an arts leader when it comes to creating a culture that honors our different perspectives and connects to us together, all at the same time. This is a time to help people understand that creativity is going to help our workplaces. We even see employers in non-arts organizations who are looking to the arts to help them solve those old and tired problems in new ways. Because in order for us to advance knowledge and information that can improve our understanding of the world, it's creativity that pushes us to search for new solutions, just as it pushes us there to express ourselves through a vocabulary of the arts. Because how you do something is just as important as what you do within the organization. So we used to look for the types of leaders who were experts in one specific subject, and they knew that subject very well, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with being the master of a specific subject. An expert performer, a creator of works of art, literature, dance, acting, visual arts, any art form, and I hope that you will always continue to perfect your own subject matter, whatever your major is. But it doesn't just stop there, because your skills have also prepared you to work with others in a leadership way. And today we need leaders who can sift through and bring together disparate pieces. And your studies at Mercer and at the Townsend School of Music are helping you to hone your creative process and express yourselves and connect with people in ways that give you a far wider range of experiences and options that others may not have, because you already know how to stand in the middle of competing perspectives and make the most quality decisions, because you already have a sophisticated understanding of style and nuances. You're not going to perform Mozart the same way you perform Debussy. You're not going to conduct a work for an 85-piece orchestra the same way you will probably conduct a marching band. And you don't try to understand a coworker who is focused on facts and logical analysis in the same way you understand another coworker who is focused on whether a situation feels good. Most people can tell the difference between a fortissimo and a pianissimo, but you can distinguish the difference between a forte and a mezzo forte. You know how to express yourself at an andante tempo instead of allegretto. You know, because you have this artistic ability to pay attention to the nuances, and that's the same ability that lets you listen well to others. And your ability to convey information to others at the right pace can set your leadership apart. Other leaders who don't have that understanding of styles, nuances, and patterns, how to express oneself effectively, other leaders can just dump information on people in a manner that actually tempts them to put up emotional roadblocks or get defensive, and it restricts them from receiving the information. So this ability to understand styles and nuances and patterns differentiates really good leaders from those leaders who pay no attention to whom they're leading. And in bringing people together, leadership ability is highly dependent upon bringing people together. You cannot really lead unless you have followers. And often, people that you're bringing together come from different perspectives, and they may not share the same objectives as you. So when do you give a group of people free rein to express themselves in a manner that's different from you? And when do you rein everyone in the group at the same time so you can together accomplish a single objective? Composers ask themselves those same questions about the music they write. Should the main theme in the fugue be prominent in the French horns or the violins? Jazz musicians look for those times in a piece of music when a single musician might take a riff on their own, and other times when all of the performers need to come back together for the sake of the composition. Really effective leaders are sensitive to those important nuances when they're working with others. They know when to step forward, and they know when to hold themselves back so that others can lead. And here's the key: there is no single approach that's right all of the time. There is no single art program or art form that everybody universally likes. That's what's so great about the arts. There is something for everybody, and the arts give us this opportunity to honor different perspectives and styles without trying to force fit everybody to like the same things. It's also really important to create a working environment where people can thrive. As an example, this also means paying attention to the board and the staff of the organizations where you would work, where you would lead. Board members and staff have skills that are related to different aspects of the organization, and this builds a lot of credibility between the community and the organization. But in addition to their legal duties, an engaged board and a staff should represent the communities in which they live, and that's through racial and ethnic diversity, as well as gender and age. And we're not there yet. A couple of years ago, the research about nonprofit boards of directors showed there was an underrepresentation of diversity. So this can be a call to action to ensure that the boards and staff represent the diversity of the communities they serve, as well as the mission and the work of the organizations. But it's not just about creating a more racially and gender expanded board and staff. It's also associated with the manner in which the organization fulfills its commitment to diversity. So how you do something is just as important as what you do, and this is why your leadership is right on time, because you know how to create a culture of inquiry that broadens our perspective, and it ensures that the programs and the services really do reflect the needs and the interests of the communities where you lead, because you know how to design systems that deliver in an equitable and an accessible way so that you can honor people's identities and so that they can know that they're included. And that's why the arts are so great to lead the way in honoring people's identities. So my parents, as Dr. Keith mentioned, were both born in the beautiful country of China. I was born in Oklahoma, grew up in Arkansas, 11,000 miles away from my parents' culture. So I really grew up with having one foot in each of my cultures. But it really wasn't until my father died when I was 9. I really started to understand that those music lessons I was taking allowed me to articulate myself more fully. So I didn't have enough words to speak about my own grief, perhaps many 9-year-olds don't, when they lose a parent, but it was the arts that gave me a vocabulary set that incorporated my heart, and I could transcend those linear everyday conversations and express a deeper identity. So I did not have to choose whether I was going to be Chinese or Arkansan. I didn't have to give up one perspective at the expense of the other, because I was living a bok choy corn dog life, having grown up in Arkansas. But the arts are not about either this or that. The arts are about both this and that. And so because of the arts, my identity was not stuck in somebody else's framework. Instead, the arts have given me a path to be able to imagine what I could be beyond what is. And today we need people who can sort through and bring together all the disparate pieces, and you play an important role in empowering identities, and not just tolerating, but celebrating the distinctiveness of multiple cultures, multiple styles, because you are all about setting context. You pay attention to these nuances, you pay attention to these patterns and perspectives when they are different from each other and when we all share commonalities. So it's a really great thing you went into the arts, because when others are stuck and they have no idea what to do next because it's never been done before, the artists will guide us right out of the problem, because you know how to create. You know that the world of creativity does not have to shrink to what others see as the only resources available, because the world of creativity expands to find fresh new ways to incorporate meaning and value, and to be able to build something out of nothing, to be able to be comfortable enough in those messy, ambiguous settings without shrinking back. So you might find yourself in situations where it may appear to have only one solution or maybe no solutions, but you're an artist and you're educated and you will figure it out. So congratulations on your work and your abilities and the studies and your teaching and your practice, and thanks for letting me join you today.
We're going to talk and ask some questions, and at any point when you want to ask a question or follow up or want more information, just wave and let us know. Before you went to the National Endowment for the Arts, I believe that you had a position as CEO and president of the Kaufman Performing Arts Center. And it's my understanding that you were there for the beginning stages, to raising the money, like $413 million, I believe it was. In our conversations, she mentioned to me that she knows a whole lot about sheetrock. Tell us what that experience was like.
Well, when I first started at the Kaufman Center for the Performing Arts, we hadn't done construction yet. We were just doing groundbreaking. And so for 5 years of the building, I had hard hat hair because I learned about construction. And I would wake up sometimes in the mornings and think, I majored in piano and I'm talking about drywall. And this lasted a lot, but the truth is, it turned out to be fantastic because at some point when you get into capital campaigns and tons of money like this one, people start trying to find ways to cut things, at least for the moment, so you could at least get the thing open and not get it stuck. So we'd have all these construction conversations with the construction committee, and they'd always be tempted, there's double the drywall in this place. But I knew why. I knew that French horns would break ribs if they had to play in acoustically compromised acoustically, but the drywall was really helping it make it happen. And so I could defend what was going on in the world of the arts because I knew about what the music was like with and without drywall. But it's the drywall, by the way. If you ever get in one of those situations, it is the drywall that wins, as well as a few other vibrational things.
Okay, Jane, if you were staying here longer, I know you have to leave to get back home after our thing, but our dog has eaten some of the sheetrock in our house. Could you come over and fix it?
Absolutely, happy to do it.
Just wanted to make sure. How did you get to be the chair of the National Endowment for the Arts? That's a pretty impressive position.
Well, and I would say this to you too, you can be, there's all these positions that are open in the government and the federal government, and if you're a citizen of the country, you can apply. And I actually believed that. You know, sometimes people say, oh, it's political, and you know, this person got it because they know so-and-so, but I really wasn't that way. But I thought I really wanted that job because I tend to get excited about situations that are forming. I like to help them, like this Performing Arts Center. And I knew, at least theoretically, I could throw my name in the hat for this position. And so I really wanted it, especially for one thing. Well, I love the arts, but I wanted it because I get a lot of energy when I get to see the national context. What's going on over here? What's going on in Georgia? Is it different from Montana? And this job would give me that opportunity to see the national context, all the different ways people are helping the arts thrive and are participating in the arts. That's the main reason I wanted. So I threw my name in the hat.
Did you ever think, as a Chinese young girl growing up in 10,000 people in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, that you would have the opportunities that the arts have given you?
I don't think I did, but I didn't ever think about, I always followed my heart. That's the bottom line. So I didn't have a trajectory in my life when I was 22 and saying, when I grow up, I want to be this, and I'm going to stay that way for 40 years. And some people do that, and they do great on that, but I don't. I typically follow my heart from one place to the next. So some other people would say, that is really silly. But it's to me, I still stand by that. If you don't know what direction to take and you're given several options and none of them feel right, it's probably not the one to take. But if you have one of them, which you say, oh, my heart just feels like that is what I want to do next, I tend to do that. I tend to follow that. I don't ever think that I'm going to do it forever, but I tend to follow it for the next step because it sort of opens the door to the following step. And so I've been not very linear about my career. But no, I didn't think about it at that time. I probably wouldn't have thought about it, now. But I knew then that I wanted to do this.
So what are you doing now?
Well, now I'm a working artist again. I love to draw just as much as I love music. So I've been working on my own portfolio, and I'll launch a website soon. So it's really been fun.
Okay. What accomplishment are you the most proud of during your tenure as chair of NEA?
Well, there are a couple of things that are personally to me that mean a lot beyond just being able to have a national context. One of them is that the agency was named the best place to work in the federal government for small agencies, because I really do care a ton about the people I work with. And if I'm leading them, there's a difference between working in a job where you feel like your boss is saying you've got to do this because this is what your job is, and there's contrasted that with working in a job where your boss is trying to figure out, how do I get this person to be so empowered they feel like they belong, or they feel like, yeah, I can make these really good decisions. And I wanted to make sure that the staff at the National Endowment for the Arts felt the way that they were empowered more of the time than, oh gosh, do I have to come here, I'm in job. So we really worked on that. We set values, we gave out prizes for not just accomplishing what they have to do in a job description. We gave out prizes on how you demonstrate your own working values. And we can go into detail on that or not, but you know, in the government there isn't a lot of money, so we were giving prizes like, you get 8 hours off. You know, so, and we figured out how to do it under the federal guidelines, but that meant so much to me that when the survey came out across the nation, and so we weren't allowed to take the survey, but the staff was, and then they get all ranked, and so we came out. That meant a lot. And then the other one that meant a lot to me is as you said, my parents were from China, or I said that, but my mom, when she was a teenager, was the change of government to communism, and it was a lot of, at the time, a lot of oppression and violence, and her father decided that he would try to help her. She was a teenager, she just graduated from high school, but she never did have a graduation ceremony because it was so much violence and oppression at the time. So they worked out a way for her to slip out she didn't have permission from the government, but she slipped out on a train and bypassed 141 interrogations. It took 8 days to get to Hong Kong, and she wore 8 pairs of underwear, one over the other, and put her money in her underwear, and just tried to look as nonchalant as possible. She didn't have any luggage or anything like that, because that would have given away that she was leaving. And so they said goodbye at the train station, and she made it out and bypassed even though she didn't have any papers to show every time they inspected her. And she made it out and eventually came to the United States. But she never saw her family again. She never saw her parents again. And there was a big cutoff, 24 years, before the countries were talking with each other again. And so by the 70s, the countries, United States and China, were exploring more ways to have conversations. And so her father wrote her after 24 years. You know, if you haven't seen a family member in 24 years, they look different from the way they did 24 years earlier. And it was a very special letter because it was, you know, I'm fine and life is good again, said her father. And she never saw him again because he died soon after that. So that was a real closing opportunity. So to answer your question, is when I got to the National Endowment for the Arts, the Chinese government, hey, the National Endowment for the Arts person's from China. Her heritage is from China. So they invited me to come to China for 10 days. And as I did get to see the arts in China, but they gave me an extra day in my mom's hometown. My mom has dementia, so I could not travel with her to ever see it. But I went to her hometown. They sent an interpreter with me, and I got to see where my mom's dad's, he was a Lutheran minister, which is really kind of odd in China, but he was. And I saw the church, and I saw where she was born, and I'm appreciative of the Chinese government for having done that. So that was a personal, special, so that combination of what I enjoyed while I was at the NEA.
Now, I understand your mom was a dorm director at Ouachita, and that's where you first got or I've heard, that you began your entrepreneurial work while your mom was a dorm director.
So somebody's doing their research behind
So-
behind my back.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Entrepreneurial work. Well, the only things that come to my mind is so I lived in the dorm with my mom after my father died. And so I was living in the dorm at 9 years old with all these college students. And I learned to put on makeup far earlier than my friends. But I also found that I had the wealth of these students who would buy my Girl Scout cookies. So I would win duffel bags and things like that for selling so many Girl Scout cookies. That's my entrepreneurial. Yeah.
Now, I heard a different story, and it was that you knew when your mom was going to make dorm inspection in the rooms, and you would give a little advance notice for money.
For a nickel or so, or a quarter maybe. See, isn't that brilliant?
I just want to make sure. So there are ways you can make money.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So I want to ask you, tell me about a time when your leadership was tested, and how did you handle it? Because I think all of us at some point in time, regardless of which direction we go, there are going to be tests that are there. How do you handle things when they're not going great?
Some random thoughts come to my mind. One of them is, I guess everybody can be tested in different ways because we're all different from each other, and so the things that I might be tested might be different from something you might be tested. But for me personally, being tested, the most testing times have been when I feel like somebody is trying to play games with me, because I love authenticity and the purity of it, and I try to set that type of a tone to give people permission to feel like they're safe enough to say something without getting thrown under the bus so when I find somebody, and you can feel if somebody's playing games, they don't have to be saying the word, you can tell, and those have been the most testing times for me. So it's that, or usually for me, it's when you might have opposing perspectives, like we've talked about before, but it's not that, it's the idea that the perspective is, it must be my way and you're wrong, and I enjoy trying to find commonalities. So how do you do that? Well, in some ways you just have to set the tone and say, if you're the leader, you can set a tone and say, this is how we will be. And putting it into practice. But the other thing I learned through something like that is you have to start it early. So let's say you're meeting somebody and you already start sensing, wait a minute, there's a different pattern here that isn't aligned with what I'm wanting to do in terms of creating a tone of us coming together or finding commonalities or embracing the different perspectives. And so you try to catch it early before it turns into something just huge. It might be conversations together. It might be laughing over the fact that you don't see eye to eye. It might be trying to find commonalities. If you're solving problems together, and we used to do this in the federal government, I would bring in some people when we were trying to work on a project together, and we would, federal government is it's this way, and nobody swims in their own lanes, and I can see why, because it's, you could be crossing into people's jobs, but I would have to say at the beginning for a while, for the next 20 minutes, I would say to our group of leaders we were together, we're going to pretend like you are safe. You are safe, but just for 20 minutes, I want you to just dream about what this project could be. Big details, little details, I don't care, but let's just do a free-for-all. We can write it all down, and then after 20 minutes, we're going to go back and do what we always do, because I wanted them to I wanted to come out of them. I knew they knew more than they were always saying, because if you're saying something, sometimes a person who is not in the job, but looking at something from another perspective can give you an insight that is very helpful than just if you were the only person doing the job. So for 20 minutes every time we met, which was like weekly, they felt permission to be safe enough to say, I wish we could do this, or wish we could do that, with no judgment. And then we go back and be our normal selves, following the rules of whatever we're doing. And so over about 6 months of being able to dream for 20 minutes a week, people got comfortable and they felt like they could say anything. And they didn't feel like they would have to say something angrily because they knew they had permission to say it and they could say it calmly where people could hear. So that helped me understand that you try to get in advance to set the tone, and you try to catch things that you have to figure this out. This is artistic. You try to catch things early before it becomes a big mess. You might say, tell me more about what that means, or I wanted to follow up, or if it doesn't work in the group, do you have just a minute? I want to check with you about something you said because I just really want to understand. And so giving people permission to say that without punishment early on allows them to be empowered and probably more loyal.
So teamwork is a very important.
It is for me.
Yeah.
It is for me. It's kind of like what we talked about in terms of jazz. There's times where you come together for the sake of the composition, and there's times where you feature different musicians, and everybody's right in terms of making the whole composition, but it doesn't always work where nobody gets to be featured, and it doesn't always work where only one person gets to do the solo and everybody else never gets to. So there is something, but it's artistry. You can figure out which tools out of your tool belt to pull out when you need it, and which ones to put back when you don't need it, as opposed to it being only one way versus the other.
Okay. I've got
there's the alarm.
I've got a whole list of questions, but I want to take some from students and faculty. Yes, ma'am. You mind taking your mask off so we can hear?
Hello.
One thing that I particularly love and appreciate about Townsend is how intentional they are to support the students with interdisciplinary interests. So you talked a little bit about that, and I love it. You talked about how arts is helpful in the leadership perspective in fields outside of the arts. Have you seen any instances where people outside the music bubble have some skills that are applicable within the music bubble?
Yes. So I think it's very cool to be able to integrate the different disciplines together. It feels like I have a tool belt that has more tools in it, and I have more skills to know which tool to pull out at the right time. So for sure, people are looking to artists, musicians. I just put them all under this umbrella right now for artists to help them figure out how to be creative in new ways or connect. But there's all kinds of, I talked about how creativity isn't, especially in creating a culture, it's not exactly linear. But at the same time, people who are in disciplines that are linear, the scientists and people like that, they bring a structure that's very valuable. That certainly did it for me. One of the reasons I feel like I can do my own art portfolio, my own creativity, is because I went and got a business degree because I thought it would be fun, and it was. But it taught me the way the world thinks, especially in the business world. So I am a much better artist because of my understanding of discipline, reaching for goals. Sometimes there's always this temptation to think that artists only create when they feel like creating, and feelings are at the heart of my decisions. But on the other hand, I like to be disciplined, and I like to be super focused, and it's something very fun and productive to reach goals, and I probably learned that more, how to do that, by being in business school. So there are opportunities that way too, but I really think the winner is always the person who has both the artist and the discipline, or the artist and the goals at the same time. But you got to follow your heart still. Thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Tyler. I'm a pianist here, and I just wanted to ask, has there ever been a moment where you put your name in the hat and it doesn't work out, or you're auditioning and you're applying and you just get no's? How do you continue to follow your heart in those moments?
Absolutely. I've gotten bucket loads of no's in my life, and I could choose to be hurt by that, how come, you know? But I know, but I actually did find myself acting like that. But what I've learned over the years is I have such a belief now in myself. I hope it's not an overconfidence, but I do have a belief in myself that I am right on time. This is what I wanted to share with you, that you're right on time. I have such a belief in that when something comes by and it looks kind of interesting, but it turns out to be a no for me, I so believe I'm right on time for myself that it's like, okay, well, that must not have been it. And so I try as fast as I can to pivot to another feeling that, hey, it's coming, Jane, and at least you learned how to practice gathering data from this organization that said no to you, and it'll help you on the next organization. You know, this is a little bit of a side, but when you're helping, I've learned when you're helping as a leader to create an environment where there's creativity and people feel like they can create, you have to give them also permission to understand that your first creative idea sometimes isn't always the best one. It's always it's like the third one. So you start with something, and maybe that's going to work, but really you have to, in creativity, give permission to fail without being punished. So you have to figure out how you're going to create that environment that lets somebody fail until it gets to be the one that's right. And that's how I think about myself now, too. If I get a no, it's like I'm learning, but it's not the right one for me because I'm right on time. So all this stuff that comes up that feels like they're saying no to me, they're just stuff that's helping me mold myself into whatever's coming next. The more we can think that way, the more we don't have to take things personally, because you really don't have to take things personally. Even if they're saying, this is you and you should take this personally. Nope, you're right on time.
Other questions? Yes.
I would like to know the perspective that you have about helping people to come together and making it possible. Is that more intuitive for you? I'm sure you've gathered skills throughout your training in business and administration, but could you fill us in a little bit on that?
I'm sure I'm too intuitive, but I've learned, and I'm still learning, but I've learned that how you present what you want to do is just as important as, you know, what you do. So it is more important for me if I were bringing together a group of people, and especially if you thought everybody was coming from different perspectives, to simply be authentic and to say those words and not take for granted that everybody understands the same way I do. So I may have to say words that I think quicker than I do when I say with my mouth. So it may be something like, okay, here are the things that are going through my mind. I want us to work on this together, and I start listing. I really want to create an environment where we all feel like we're empowered. So these are some of the objectives I wish we could get together. I hope that you will feel safe in saying something, and we'll figure out how to do this. You know, there are some ground rules. You know, if you have some real challenges, we find another way to do it, so we don't let anybody just come over and take over the meeting and run roughshod over the rest of us. But you set this tone, but the most important thing for me personally would be to set it with authenticity. This is what I dream of doing. If we get to situations where it really isn't working, I probably will step in and say, you know, we're going to follow the guidelines for a while, some other rules until we can get back to what I hope we can do. But it's just lots of taking my intuition and putting our words to it, and not assuming that everybody thinks or understands one sentence that comes out of my mouth. I may need 3 more paragraphs to say, because the only thing that's bringing us together at that point is our words. Sometimes I think I wanted to say this earlier, is, you know, my music for me and art have been ways that I haven't had to use these linear words, because there's something far deeper in my vocabulary now by using music. But on the other hand, when we're bringing somebody together, that's when words, I have found, do focus us together. So choose your words on how you feel authentic is the guiding principle for me. And I'll trip over words all the time, but I don't really care as long as I'm authentic. I'll start there.
Others? Yes, sir.
I was just wondering if you could talk to sort of co-leading, because there are lots of situations like in the orchestra where there's a conductor or a classroom with a teacher, and it's very clear leadership dynamic. But in smaller musical ensembles or just groups where
String quartets. Yeah.
where there's kind of not so much a clear
Yeah.
leadership.
Yeah. I mean, somebody needs to write an organizational culture case on, what is it, St. Martin's in the Fields? Do they have a conductor, or is it, or does everybody's like, okay, I've seen them perform and it's like, okay, we're starting, all of us, and that's a chamber orchestra, and 2 people, 2 apart, so not huge. And certainly string quartets, everybody, how do you bring a string? I love string quartets because everybody has to figure out they're holding their own because nobody else is out there, and yet they're trying to create something cohesive. So it's the same, to me, it's the same kind of concept. How do you co-lead when you all know you're contributing to this, and it sets the tone. So if you're co-leading, I would say with the other co-leaders, we got to figure out how we do this, and we have to demonstrate to each other and to ourselves, how do I manage myself when I am co-leading, and how can I help you, and how do we make sure that this is cohesive and at the same time. So you almost have to just navigate and negotiate together and figure it out depending on everybody's personality. But keeping that at the center focus of starting with the intention of, well, we'll do this together, and if we trip over each other, we'll talk about better ways to handle it, and sort of monitoring it along the way has been helpful to me. But yeah, string quartets I just marvel at string quartets, how they sound cohesive, but everybody's on a different part, and yeah.
Any others? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Say it a little louder. Okay. Well, one of the things I don't, I'm going to get to your question, but one of the things I don't like about myself if I do this is I don't like watching myself feel like I've got to have the last word every time. And so I do sometimes see situations where somebody throws something out there and another one feels like, well, I've just got to respond because I don't believe that way, and they've got to have the last word. And because it feels like if I don't say something, then I'm going to look like I'm not powerful. And there are ways to respond. You could do that, and there's sometimes ways that I have to say to myself, this is a situation where I'm going to manage myself, and I'm actually not going to give you my personal power because you're not the kind of person, I'm saying this to myself, I'm not saying it to them, you're not the kind of person that I want to give my personal power to, so that leads to the next question. But to finish that, giving my personal power, if somebody said, well, where should I start in terms of learning how to lead? You lead yourself first. You lead yourself before you lead anybody else. And so by understanding how you manage yourself and your own emotions and your feelings and when do you step out and when do you not step out is artistic. And sometimes stepping out is absolutely the right thing to do. But how you step out is a big deal. And sometimes walking away with this sense that I don't have to give my personal power to that person is the right thing to do too. So those are the questions that I can ask. Now, if somebody says, well, the arts are not nearly as important as, I try to diffuse personally, and I may be in a situation where I shouldn't diffuse, but one of the things that come to my mind with that question is to say, for me, I would probably say something like, well, that may be true, but I can't tell you how many times I have seen, and this is the truth, people who were having nothing in terms of all the physical necessities we needed. But their spirit was so strong and their energy was so strong because they knew, and that will help you create yourself out of problems. And I've seen that so much that I believe in it. So it would be really hard for me to dismiss the arts at the choice of something else. It does not have to be one versus the other. And I think one of the things we're tempted to think about is there's this scarcity of resources, and if you don't give me part of your pie, then I'm not going to have part of the pie, and I'm going to get that pie. But the reality, as you know, is imagination and creativity and helping us dream way beyond what is somebody else said, here's the fence. No, you don't have to do that. You can figure out how to dream beyond the fence, and that will get me out of typical sticky wickets. But there's not an answer for this versus that. But if you have those tool belts, that's how it helps me. Somebody had is that in there? Okay. Somebody had a hand over here.
Someone over here.
This question kind of follows up with your last point. So how do you empower people to find creative solutions in organizations that are extremely resource-strapped?
Okay, well, this is a really good one because I worked for the federal government. And so here's one thing we did. So we did try to set the tone on all the stuff we've talked about. You know, we tried to make safe places for people to dream and brainstorm and come to how do we work on projects together? What do you know? What do you know? And all that together. But at the same time, I was paying attention to the systems and the structure of the federal government because I really wanted to follow the rules. And so one of the things we did, let me think about that because I thought of something in terms of, you were talking about resource strapped, right? Oh yeah, so one of the things we did, and this was internal because I really wanted the staff to feel like they belonged. And because one of the things that happens at the National Endowment for the Arts is, you know, presidential appointees come in and they stay their term and then they go, or sometimes they stay longer, but many often they go, and I stayed my term and then I went. And then the next person comes in. So here we have these wonderful employees who are just seeing a change of boss every few years, every 4 or so years, and every boss has a different personality, and you know, it's just like, how did you get through that? So I felt more about them kind of teased. I can't believe you get through all of this. You know, we all come in and we all have different personalities, and then you have to put up with the next one. But so what we did is we did pay attention to the structure, not only how we did it, but we set up a time where we said, the first thing I did when I came to the NEA is I said I want to meet with every single person, and so that took 3 months because there were about 150 people or so. And I said, I only want you to answer 2 questions when we meet. One is, what gives you energy? And the second one is, what shuts you down? And I'm not going to judge you. I'm just listening for patterns. And we did that. We met with every single person, and I found patterns. One of them is that people at the NEA love what they do, and they love the teams that they have, the internal teams, but they didn't always talk with each other on other teams. So teams that did their work on creating contracts, you know, so everything would be correct and following the federal guidelines, that was over here, and then there were these people who were giving grants across the nation in theater or something like that, and they, you know, one was out there and the other one was making sure everything was airtight, and if they're doing their jobs right, they should bump heads because they're almost doing the opposite job, and yet they're working for the same organization. And so what I wanted to know, and I said this to the staff, is I wish you could tell me I just said I wish you would tell me a handful of ways you wish this organization would operate. And you tell me what you want to come up with some ideas, and you tell me, and we'll create a set of organizational values. So they did it, and they brought it back to me, every person on the staff. And so some of the values were things like, we want to be an organization that celebrates teamwork across the organization. So we have to figure out how to celebrate that team over there who does everything opposite from us. How are we going to do that? And appreciate it. Or another value was we want some moments to say we're having fun, which told me, I'm translating, well, maybe that means we should have more, parties. And parties in federal government is different. It's a different definition. So what does that mean? And so we came up with 6 values. I didn't, they did, and they brought them to me, and we identified them. And another one was really have an understanding, every person in the organization have an understanding of how their work contributes to the national picture, because we were national, and you are helping, we may be in Washington, D.C., but you're helping somebody in Georgia, or you're helping somebody in Florida, or, every state and some territorial jurisdictions. So after we identified these 6 values, they came up with 6, and then we had a prize every year where somebody nominates somebody else. You can't nominate yourself. Somebody nominates somebody else who you've seen demonstrate those values through their actions. And they would turn these in, and I would pick the winners of different values. So this is the person who has demonstrated the value of teamwork. Congratulations, and we give them like a little prize and 8 hours off, because no resources, but we got permission from the legal departments to give somebody 8 hours off as long as they told their supervisor, and you didn't even have to take all 8 hours. You could take 1 hour here, 1 hour there, just any way to feel, and because we couldn't give money because we didn't have money to give for things like that. This was about grants, correctly so. So you find creative ways within the rules and the guidelines to just celebrate somebody. It may just be, hey, good job, Dr. Keith, or it may be something like, I'm going to give you 8 hours off because you were nominated by your peers. I mean, how cool is that? It's not that you were nominated by the boss, you were nominated by your coworkers who said, you know what, you demonstrated teamwork today. And every year we would have those cheap little recognition times, and we laughed together. And so that's one way to do it without resources, is to find a way that works that doesn't cost money.
Okay, we're going to wrap up. Jane, I have one last question, okay? I think sometimes we take better care of our cars than we do ourselves, okay? I'm going to take my car in and get the oil changed. I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. But sometimes I run out of gas, and I'm sure you have too. For these students that are sitting here, what do you do for you that gives you the inspiration, the energy, and the drive to manage what you've done in your career, but also manage yourself?
For me, I love understanding myself. So I love learning about how I feel and how I react in certain situations, and I've gotten enough practice to figure out how to manage myself, especially in situations that might be tempting to call out a feeling in me where I would not like myself as much if I said something or if I were destructive. And so for me, number one for me is just, it's all about managing myself. But in terms of getting rejuvenated, my artwork has helped me do that, and I think it's because I allow myself to be still. And it is really hard to be still, especially for people whose minds race or who just have overabundance of energy, which you can celebrate. But there's something about being still, even for 10 minutes. So I'm not talking about having 8-10 hours of being still, unless you want to do that. But at some point of figuring out how to manage yourself and be still, you start feeling like, when is that moment where I don't need to be still because I have enough energy now that I can reach out to somebody else and love them in a way that helps them, and I feel like I have enough energy, because you can have no energy to love somebody else. I don't care who it is, even in families, unless you figure out how do you manage yourself first. So people sometimes have said, well, doesn't that sound kind of selfish? But if you don't take care of yourself first, whatever that means, then you won't have the energy to be there for somebody else. So that's what I do.
So be still means not doing anything. Be still doesn't mean stop what you're doing and stay on your cell phone or your iPad.
It may, if that's what they feel like. Now, for me, being still is drawing. There's something about, me turning one eye away and one ear away from all that is, like, I don't have a television anymore. I keep up with the headlines. I think that kind of tells everything. But I don't sit there and get glued or I've learned how to not get pulled into something that is so tempting because it's more dramatic and everything. I've learned how to, but being still to me doesn't mean just sitting there. It can mean, some people love to meditate and stuff, but for me being still is simply, you'll know when you are. Yeah.
Well, we can't thank you enough for taking your time to be with us. You've given us great ideas, great insights. I hope that we can live our passion like you've lived your passion. And we're very grateful for your time today. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we're done. Y'all have a great rest of the day, and we'll look forward to tomorrow night with Canadian Brass.
Well, I hope you will send me